Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Well, after our little trip to Manila, the big city, compared to our very sleepy little town here, we're seeing the whole difference. And I'm realizing now that even though my upbringing mainly was in a big city like London, which at the time that I was there was about 11 million people. You couldn't walk down the street without bumping shoulders at least 20 times. So how did I get used to being in a small town kind of living? It's an interesting question. I ask myself sometimes too. But then when I do walk down to the road, as I do from time to time, even when the truck was going, I'd actually listen to the sound of my own footsteps on the ground and look around and see nothing but beautiful hills in every direction. And that was a pretty good answer. When we were in Manila, everything really ramps up very, very quickly when you get into a big town. I'm not telling anybody anything that they don't know here, but it does make you realize what you're missing. If you have a calm and quiet way of life, well, is our way of life calm and quiet? And actually, no, it's not, because we've got too many chickens named Brad Pitt and God knows what. And I don't know how many roosters, and now we've got, I don't know what it is, 2 or 3 goats, I think. We still have a pig called Moon. Beth's way of naming things is quite unique, and who am I to argue when she calls a cat cat? What can you say? Well, anyway, we were very happy to get back, and even though it did mean that we had to do that walk, well, I had to do that walk with what I've just had done. Wasn't so great, wasn't great fun, but at least it wasn't raining. Now, if it had been raining, boy, that could have been quite a challenge, but it wasn't. We were very lucky. And we haven't seen any rain since we got back. Now, that doesn't mean we haven't had any rain, but we haven't seen any. Now, it amazed me to get back and realize that sometimes in the city, the traffic is so heavy that there is no pause in it. We came out of the hospital on that particular occasion after we'd seen the doctor, I think, that first time. So I was fit and able then, and we looked across at the Jollibee, which is Beth's addiction. Beth just loves Jollibee. And we looked across, and there it is across the road. Can you imagine? It's like, I think it was 6 lanes of traffic, and we just crossed it at one crossing, which put us in the wrong place for crossing over to Jollibee. So we then had to cross, we would have had to have crossed back over another 6 lanes of traffic to the other side, which permitted pedestrians to cross there. So we would have crossed there, and then we would have crossed again to get to Jollibee. And we just said, oh, forget it. Just imagine being able to see a restaurant and it just being too much trouble to try to get there. And that's the kind of living that people in big cities, especially if they don't have a car, boy, it can be tough. Now, when we got into the taxi, it's hassle there. You know, first of all, before you can even get in the taxi, this was our experience, before you could even get in the taxi, you had to tell the taxi driver where you were going to go. Then he would offer you a deal. Well, 200 pesos, 400 pesos. And then you would say, no, we want it on the meter, and he would say, the traffic, it's too much traffic. In other words, to do his job, when it got tough with traffic, he would demand an illegal surcharge, which he really is not allowed to do. But, and I did read somewhere, one comment by someone who said, whenever anybody does that, when a taxi driver does that to me, I take his number and I call the authorities and I report him. And I thought about that. That really is admirable. It's changing things greatly. And then I thought, do I want to be a policeman, an unpaid, unwanted policeman, reporting taxi drivers? And it would have been, I don't think we had more than 2 rides where we didn't have to deal, where we didn't have to bargain, well, you know, for an illegal price. So I wouldn't want to be doing that as an unpaid, unwanted job. So after a while you have 2 choices. You can say, now forget it, or you can deal. You can say, no, not 300, 200. And then maybe they'll do it. And so what's the calculations? Well, you're calculating in your mind, well, let me see, what is the fare likely to be? And the fare likely might be 150. So if you get it for 200, is it such a big deal? And you have to say, in the interests of having a reasonable life, it's not that big a deal, only if you make it that way. So we ended up dealing. Now then, when you get into the taxi, you've got the scene as you drive along, and as you drive along you can't help but notice the kind of life that people have in a big city. If they live in condos, if they're lucky, they live in condos, because then they'll have some leisure place like a pool or a keep fit room, and that'll be thrown in with their condo. But for ordinary people, like when Beth was in Cebu, she lived in an extremely Spartan boarding house. They call it a boarding house. Now, if you're in the West, a boarding house is one of those things where you have a nice orderly room, and then you come down to breakfast and you eat breakfast with everybody, and it's bed and breakfast, and I don't know, Mrs. Jeffries takes care of everybody, and would you like another cup of tea? Not that kind of boarding house. One where you have a room that's just about big enough for a bed and a locker and perhaps somewhere to put a TV. That's a boarding house here. Then they have what's called bed spaces, where you might even share the bed with somebody. If you work nights and they work days, that might also be a very cheap way to live. And then when you go to work, you stand outside and you wait. In Manila, you wait for jeepneys, and the jeepneys are packed, and it's a very crowded, shoulder-to-shoulder way of life. And was I glad to get back to our lonely, isolated house on the top of a hill or into the mountains? Boy, I sure was. So we're back home now, and the dogs are barking, and nothing is peaceful anymore. We've got the cats lying around, and life is back to normal. Well, nearly back to normal, because I have 5 weeks of house arrest. So my house arrest is going okay, I guess. I've watched more movies in the last few days than I have in a long time, but we'll put up with it. So this is a foreigner in the Philippines. Thanks for looking in. Bye for now.